316, the Link to the Past Randomizer podcast. I am your host, your agent. Today on the show, we've got Hurfy Durfy. You might know him as one of the co-hosts of the Go Mode podcast. Of course, that's our rival podcast. We will try to bring them down at all costs. I kid, of course. Love the Go Mode podcast. I've been on their show several times. A bunch of good dudes there. Dante as my first guest on this podcast. Now we're having Hurf. Just need to get Temp to come on the show and can complete the trifecta. But yeah, that's what we've got coming up today. Let's get to some other stuff before we get to that interview. First of all, I want to congratulate Gamachu for winning the Kaz Boots tourney. He took the win over Rob J. Beasley in the finals. Funny enough, it was a hover seed or a Moldorm bounce seed. And Gamachu, being Gamachu, was able to run out of bombs on the Moldorm bounce, get some bombs from the Wizrobes below Moldorm 2 and get the Moldorm bounce just in time to get the win and secure the tournament. So GG's to Gamachu and to Rob J. Beasley. Single limb tournaments go really fast. They're a lot of fun to watch because they're so volatile. So nice job to the admins over there. I would say it was a pretty successful tournament, and I know they had a lot of participation. See if they run it again. Of course, the big news was the league reveal this past Saturday. Season 5, they revealed all of the open and invitational teams, as well as the schedules. If you go to the league Discord, you can find the Twitch VOD over there. It was over on twitch.tv/the ALTTPR League. They had Days Cloud, Dante, and Amaranth in the booth, going over all of the teams, all of the divisions. I can't go over all of them because there's just too many. A lot of new teams in the Invitational, not just the teams that earned their spots from the Open, but a lot of call-ups and a lot of mix-ups, players going from one team to another. I can finally talk about my team. My team is called the Divine Beastie Boys, formerly the Skull Kids. I was on the Skull Kids at the beginning of the season, didn't finish the season out. Shireen chose not to come back, and I ended up filling up his spot. We changed the name from the Skull Kids to the Divine Beastie Boys. I'm a huge Beastie Boys fan, so pretty happy with the name and the logos. Really excited about this league season. It's been really nice to be on the outside and to just play, and I'm really looking forward to playing this and seeing how we do. So the Divine Beastie Boys are myself, Gamachu, and Ramond, and looking to have a good time and see if we can make some noise. A lot of new invitational teams. Again, I'm not going to go over all of them. I would recommend checking out the VOD and seeing the breakdown of all the open teams and all the invitational teams. I'm going to do early season predictions for the invitational. So the top 4 teams, I think, of each division qualify for the playoffs. So there are 2 conferences with each conference having 2 divisions. So 8 teams from each conference will make the playoffs. And I believe they'll be reseeded from 1 to 8, and that's how the playoffs will work. So I'm just going to predict the top 2 out of each division. And again, if you've listened to the show, you know how wrong my predictions are, but I'm going to do it anyways. So let's take a look at the divisions. This is all on ALTTPRleague.com. You can check out all of the divisions, all of the teams. Sigma's made an amazing website, has all the information that you could want. So for the Light World Conference in the Kakariko division, I'm going to take the Perfect Unadulterated Gaming Squad, or PUGs for short. That's the new super team of Dante, Arier, and Andy. It's hard to pick against that team. And I also take the Tau Roomies. Big fan of this team. Jamie Sher, Artie Walsh, and Plasma Kappa. That's my prediction for the top 2. In the Lost Woods division, I'm going to take the Eastern Skippers, formerly the Spoilers. That's Shady, Dr. Marty, and Zelga. And I'm going to take Triple Crown Fiesta. And if you haven't seen this logo and the player icons, I highly recommend you head over to the website and check it out because it's hilarious. It's Yoshi, Scholzer, and Teta. Really strong team there. In the Dark World Conference, in the Skull Woods division, I'm going to take Beats from the East. That's Moogle Charm, Jula Ninja, and Homemade Beer. And WJPDTB as the top 2. And then in the Misery Mire division, I got to take the Divine Beastie Boys, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for us. And then I also take To Infinity and Pagog, which is Will, WC, Ralkin, and Humbug. Really strong team. So as all my predictions go, they'll probably be wrong. I am leaving out 2 other teams from each division that will be making the playoffs as well. But it's so hard to predict. Some really cool teams, some really cool logos. I'm very excited for the league. I'm really excited to play and just play and have a really good time. And I think our team's going to be good. And I think we're going to have fun. Ramon and I have been doing some veterans co-op practice, and we're just having a blast doing that. So I'm really looking forward to this season of the league And it'll be really interesting to see who comes out on top. Of course, there's a lot of stuff going on with the Open League as well. So make sure you check out that VOD. They really break things down. And then check out ALTTPRLeague.com. It has all the information with some really, really great teams, team names, and logos. Do want to shout out one of my favorites, Smells Like Troll Seed from the Open League. Smells Like Troll Seed has an awesome name and one of, if not my favorite logos. It's great. Check that out. Starting next Monday, there's going to be a lot of league action going on Speed Gaming and the league channels. So going to be a very busy time. Quick ladder invitational update. The entrance ladder invitational that's been going on. I basically played myself out of the top 16. I had a decent start and then things kind of fell and I was at like the bottom. I was at the very bottom. And from the bottom, I crawled myself all the way to the top 16. I was, I think, 15th, tied for 15th with Plasma Kappa. I had 1,680 points, which I believe is going to be good enough to make the top 16. It's close. It's like right on the cusp. I didn't believe that it would be good enough. So I played an extra one and I lost. And then I played another one and I lost. And then I played a third one and I lost. The nail in the coffin was I went 0-4. And that was a really tough 0-4. I'm really disappointed in myself for a couple of reasons. One, losing just sucks, right? Like disappointed that I lost. Two, disappointed how I handled it. I feel like I've come a long way in handling tilts and handling losses. And in some parts that's true. Loss used to, especially 4 in a row, would wreck my entire day, if not a couple of days. And now it just wrecks my stream. So first I want to apologize to anyone that was watching on my streams those days. I think I cut one off short and Gamachu called me out for it. And he was right. I shouldn't have done that because people are there. And I just was so pissed. I just cut stream and that's not cool. So if you're on my stream that day, first of all, I apologize. But I just felt so, maybe tilted's the right word, but just disappointed. Just disappointed after putting in a bunch of work to try to make the top 16 and then failing so spectacularly, losing 4 in a row. That was just, I think that was the hard part. And the hard part is the tilt. Like I got tilted. Like I'm done with Rando. Like, this is my retirement. I'm done. I'm not going to play League and that's it. And that's not true. That's just anger. That's just anger and disappointment talking because I love playing the game. But I think I'm disappointed in myself for not handling the tilt better. Like I've allowed myself to get angry or be disappointed that I lost, but then how do I respond to it? And it has been positive. It's like I think I've gotten better and then the test comes and I fail. I think that's the hard part, is the failing. I thought I got better and it's just a continual work in progress. I think that's the thing, is it's never going to end. Like the tilt just doesn't stop. You don't just solve it. It's something that I continually have to work on. I think that's the hard part. And losing in bunches is really hard too. Like taking a loss isn't too bad. Taking 2 losses isn't that bad. When it's 3 losses and 4 losses in a row, then things start to compound and it's tough. And so I took a break. I've been taking like just a little bit of a break before the league starts, trying to refresh those batteries, recharge the batteries, not let those disappointments affect my gameplay. Just take away the stress of racing before the league, because the league's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to the league. And if I go 0-6 or 0-7 or whatever, I'll be disappointed, but I think I can handle it. We'll see. We're getting close to the end of the season, and I'm not sure what season 3 is going to look like, but I'm excited for the league. I'm excited to talk to some people on different teams in season 3 and just kind of get people's perspective. I think it's going to be a good time on the show while the league is going. Get some new perspectives. All right, so the 216 Weekly this past Saturday, we had League Cross Keys, which is cross keys with pseudo boots. We had 8 people entering. We had Tyler Salt and Maniacal on the restream. Tyler was able to take the W, and he chose for this week's 216 Weekly True Pot Hunt. So we're going to be playing one of those avian art modes. This one looks to be the most fun of all of those modes. It's like there's 420 pieces of Triforce everywhere. I think you got to find like 200 and something, and it has pot shuffle. So I don't know about this one. If you don't join, I kind of understand, but I do think this is like a fun mode. I've watched a couple of runs. I've watched Spleeby run it a couple of times, and it seems like a good time. So that's this Saturday, noon Eastern, twitch.tv/fearagent_. for the Restream True Pod Hunt. That's what we're going to be doing. On today's show, we've got Hurfy Durfy. This was one of my favorite conversations I've had with anyone on the show. I think all of the conversations I've had with all of my guests have been great. Some have been even greater than that, though, and Hurfy's is one of them because we don't really even talk Link to the Past randomizer. And getting to know Hurf and getting to hear his story and just his personality, one, it makes me understand why he's got so many friends in the community and why he's kind of stuck around despite not playing the game a lot. And two, makes me just want to be his friend. Yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to hear this one. So enough of me. Let's get to Hurf. All right, Hurf, I'm super excited to have you on the show today because as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, I've been on your podcast multiple times. I've been a guest for the league stuff and some other stuff. And mysteriously, you just never show up when I'm there for some reason. The only episodes where you're missing is the ones that I'm not there. So it's cool to actually like sit down and have a conversation with you.
I agree. First of all, I'm very honored to be on here. I'm a little surprised, I do have to say, because I've been around for quite some time, but I don't really play or race much. I'm not sure how much interesting stuff I really have to say, but we'll see where it goes.
Well, I mean, you have a podcast that comes out every other week about the game. So there's that. And honestly, I don't care if you play the game or not. I mean, that's kind of how we know each other. But I'm more interested in to hear, kind of the history of how you started playing the game and kind of because honestly, I don't even know. Like you've been around way longer than I have. And so you have a history with the game and like everyone. So.
Yeah, kinda. It's sort of died down a little bit. I'm feeling like a dinosaur at this point where I'm like, oh, who are all these new people that I don't know about? But other than that, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's partially your fault since because you're in a podcast that helps generate interest for new players. So
yeah, true.
Let's start kind of at the beginning of ALTTPR. When did you first discover Link to the Past randomizer?
All right, so I think my history is kind of similar to a lot of histories you hear from people when you ask them about how they started in ALTTPR. I just, got into it a little bit earlier than most, I guess. I think it all really started with GDQ. So, I started watching GDQs in 2013, 2014, maybe something like that, pretty early on. So I had like an extremely shallow connection to speedrunning in a way. So I knew what speedrunning was. It's basically the connection that I had to it. And via that, I eventually found the speed gaming group of channels. And I watch them every now and again. I'm usually a pretty big YouTube user. I'm not on Twitch a lot, but when I was on Twitch and I saw that a game that I was interested in was on speed gaming, I'd usually watch because, it was cool to see the speed runs and have commentary with it and have it kind of explained and see what's happening. And so in that way, I stumbled upon I think it was the Spring 2017 tournament, maybe.
Okay.
I think something like that. And it was going. And since, I've listened to a couple of podcast episodes of yours and people have been talking about StarCraft 2 a lot. I've noticed, strangely. But I used to commentate a lot of StarCraft 2 games, shoutcast, as we used to call them in my days.
Okay.
And that's why I was immediately interested in commentating for Rando because, I used, like everyone else, I used to love A Link to the Past. I thought the Rando thing was a super neat idea and a very novel concept that I've never seen anywhere else before. And I was super interested in playing it, but it was also like almost more so than playing it. I was interested in commentating for it.
I see.
But back in that day, they shot me down by saying that only players are commentating. So I had no choice. I had to start playing.
So you actually got kind of bullied into playing the game. That's crazy. It's funny to think about back in the day because I remember this too. Like there was a whole rigmarole you had to go through to become a commentator. Like there was a level of commentary that was better back then. I if I'm honest, like there was you had to prove yourself a bit. Now commentary is open to everyone. So I don't know.
I feel like there were certain levels of it. So when I first got into it, it was such a, small, I want to say small group. It wasn't really small. I guess there were like maybe 50, 60 people or something like that. But it was a relatively small group of people who played the game. A lot of them were NMG speedrunners, who just kind of help test the thing and stuff. And due to the small pool and the knowledge that you kind of needed to make it at least a somewhat interesting cast, they only wanted people who played it. And then later on in the main tournaments that kind of follow that, where I started getting involved in the administrative side of things, that's kind of where it ramped up to almost a little bit of a ridiculous degree, I feel like.
Yeah.
We went a little bit overboard there.
Yeah, there's got to be a balance to it, right? It's got to be like, you got to let people in, and you want people that are knowledgeable and can talk, not talk out of their ass, and
exactly,
know what they're saying.
I think the balance that they found now is pretty decent in that, we did away, or they did away. I don't even remember if I was still part of the whole thing or not, but they did away with the whole, you have to fill out a quiz and you have to do a whole, like, you have to link to previous commentaries that you did, and if you weren't up to snuff, they tell you to go commentate a couple SG dailies or something like that, and it was like, as you said, a whole rigmarole that felt kind of unnecessary. Now I think there's mic checks now, which are kind of necessary because you don't want to, you don't want someone sounding like they're commentating from the airport. We all know how annoying that can be. And other than that, I think the quality control, in big quotes, if you want to call it that, is more from the closer we get to the end of the tournament, the higher profile the commentators are probably going to be. And I think that's a pretty fair balance. Yeah,
I agree with that. Also, back when you were, in 2017, when you just started, there wasn't a ton of ALTTPR content, right? Like, this is the beginnings of the game. Now you have a shit ton of tournaments going on constantly with all of them being restreamed, right? So it's almost like 24/7 ALTTPR commentator needs. So it's a bit different than it was in 2017.
It definitely is. I mean, the community kind of grew. I don't know if it grew at the same rate as the needs for commentators did, because as you say, it feels like is there ever a time when there's not a tournament anymore?
No.
I don't think that happens anymore, right? There's always a tournament. And, if it would only be one tournament, that would already be a miracle. There's usually 4 or something going on at the same time of some way or variety.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the main tournament sort of kick things off. I guess there was like the Key Sanity tournament. Were you around for that?
Well, I really... I think I was. The one that I really distinctly remember that has also been brought up on a previous episode, I kind of forgot who brought it up, but it was the entrance tournament, the first one that was run by, I don't know if I should mention him or not, but a person, let's call him a person, an admin, who ended up doing some shenanigans with the seed that the people had to play. But I do have to be grateful to him because he gave me a start in commentary, I didn't get into the main tournament because they said only players are commentating. And so I figured, well, I'll try a community run tournament. And I got my start commentating, out of all things, friggin' entrance randomizer after having played like 4 seeds and barely knowing anything about the game. But, kind of worked out somehow. The one thing that will forever be my legacy is the name Dark World Shopping Mall.
Oh, did you come up with that?
I did come up with that because in that entrance tournament, whenever anyone went there to that place, it was always shops. So I was like, it's like the Dark World Shopping Mall over there, and it stuck around. And I don't think anyone remembers that I coined that, and I don't really care. But I did come up with that back in 2017, I guess, maybe 2018, early 2018.
Well, I'm renaming it now. It's now Hurf's Shopping Mall. That's what I'm gonna start calling it now. Where are you at? Oh, I'm in Hurf Shopping Mall. Oh, you mean Dark Shopping Mall? Yeah, that's it. I had no idea that you came up with that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's just something that, I'm sure you've had those moments during commentary where, inspiration strikes and you say something stupid and it just kind of sticks for some reason. I don't know why it stuck, but it did.
No, that's cool. So when you started playing the game, did you have interest in racing, or was it literally just so that I can do commentary?
No, it was a little bit of both. I started playing it because I was also interested in playing it. I thought it was a cool concept. And as I said, I liked Link to the Past back in the day. And just watching it wasn't enough anymore at some point. But I played a ton of seeds offline just by myself, generating one, downloading it, playing it, not even having a timer on or anything like that.
Sure.
Using good old cross products tracker back in the day. But eventually I figured, why not give this whole SRL racing thing that people are so uppity about a try? Why not? Give it a shot, set up your stream, just some, super janky thing. My internet was horrible back then. And I could barely stream like a 480p thing of Link to the Past without dropping a million frames. It was awful, but it worked. And I think I forfeit my first race as well because it was like 4 a.m. or something. But I got a little more competitive eventually. And my only, I suppose, claim to fame is that in the 2018 main tournament, one of them, I signed up and didn't make it in. And went to the secondary tournament, as it was called before it was the Challenge Cup. Mm-hmm. And I played in that in a group versus Vitor, but I didn't even make it out of the group stages. And that was kind of I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I'm not made for this. I never really had the drive to, sit down and grind out seeds and get better at the game. I wish I was, but it's one of those things where, I'm very aware of the fact that I can't really get better without practicing. But I would love to just be great at the game without practicing.
Sure. I mean, that's everyone's hope.
Right. Who wouldn't, right? So, but I understand that I can't get better if I don't put in the time, but I just don't. I don't know. It's even though it's, compared to everything else that includes other randos and speedrunning and stuff, it's relatively short. It's maybe 2 hours, depending on what mode you play and stuff like that. Right. But that's 2 hours where I'm like, I can't sit down for 2 hours and play this shit.
Yeah. I mean, listening to you on the Go Mode podcast, it sounds like you play a lot of games though, right? So it feels like you don't like being boxed into, hey, I just play Rando, or mostly just play this certain game. You want to kind of experience it all, right?
I think that's kind of my problem. I have what I like to call, I'm sure I didn't coin this phrase, but I like to call it gaming ADHD, where I just can't ever stick with a game. There's few games that I put a lot of time in. And then, there's games with New Game Plus and people play them forever and ever. And there's maybe 5 games total that I really put like where I would be, where I'd say that's a crazy amount of hours into.
Okay.
And other than that, I'm always looking out for new games. I'll always be playing the new game. Sometimes, to my own detriment, where I'll drop a game in the middle of playing it to play a new game and then never come back to the old game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to the previous game that you dropped, right? Like if it was as good as you'd hoped it was, you wouldn't be able to drop it.
Probably. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a matter of a really good game came out that I'm playing, but then a game comes out that I've been looking forward to for a long time. So it's, it's not that it's a bad game. It just stands no chance. And then usually I'm faced with the problem where I'm like, well, I want to play this game, but I don't remember anything about the plot or the controls or how to play this. So I'd have to start over, and I don't want to do that. So I just never finish it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm actually surprised that more people aren't like that. Like it actually surprises me how a single game can capture people. Like for me, I pretty much only play Link to the Past. There's like a million games out there that I'd like to play. I played Breath of the Wild when it was out, and that kind of like encompassed my entire vision. Then I played Super Mario Odyssey and stuff. But for the most part, I'm like a Link to the Past main. That's basically all I want to play when I get a chance to play. I'm surprised more people aren't like you, where they're like playing multiple. And maybe they are. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But it's definitely like, I always find it surprising to find someone like you. I always found, like, in general, speedrunners so fascinating as well, because I can't ever imagine sitting down with a game, like one game, and just playing it for thousands and thousands of hours, you know, and just grinding it out over and over again, resetting. It's not even like in speedruns, it's even crazier because it's not even randomized. You don't even have that little bit of change in it. You're just grinding the same shit over and over for thousands of hours. And I'm like, how do you do that? I'm done with the game after 15 hours.
Right. And I think Rando is the thing that makes, for me, Link to the Past, be able to play it over and over again is it's different every time. That's why I don't like grind NMG as much, because it is what you're talking about. It's like, oh God, just doing the same thing over and over again. But with like Rando, it's a new experience every time. I think that's the appeal, I guess, right?
I mean, yeah, that's really the big selling point on it. And I think that's also what made me stick around for as long as I have, at least partly. Because, you know, even though I don't play it anymore, it's still interesting to kind of watch and follow and see new developments and new modes come out and, you know, what's happening here, what's happening there. And I am still involved in things, even if I don't want to be sometimes. Right.
We'll get to those things. Let's actually rewind and go to young Hurf. What was young Hurf playing as a kid?
Well, I've told the story on the Gomo podcast before, but that doesn't mean it doesn't bear repeating. So I grew up in an apartment building with a neighbor kid who was 5 years older than me. And we really made friends very early on when I was very young. Like I barely even remember. And I always, like in hindsight, I think it's quite fascinating because at that young age, 5 years is, you know, a massive gap.
Oh, yes.
And,
yeah, 2 years is a lot.
Right. And like it started out with me being like 5 or 6 and him being like 10 or 11. So I was like, why did that guy ever bother with me? But I was very impressionable. And he had like a C64. And that was my you know, gateway into video games, you could say. He taught me how to work it and, you know, load, shift 242, comma 8, comma 1 and all that crap. God, old times. And,
that's awesome.
You know, funny, that's, you know, I think I've said this before somewhere as well, but the first English word young Hurf ever learned was continue. Because that's the word that came up when, you know, you game over it in the C64 game or something. And I was like, what's that weird word? And how do you even pronounce a U and an E next to each other? That's so weird. What are you doing with that? So I looked it up and I learned what it meant. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll remember that forever.
That's awesome. So we didn't mention this. Where are you from?
Oh, I am from Germany. I'm always unsure about how thick my accent is, because I don't hear it, but other people obviously hear it. So I never really know if anyone can tell.
Yeah, it's a very slight accent compared to a lot of the other Germans in the community, I would say. So,
yeah, I mean, I have lived in Texas for 3 years, so that influenced me heavily, I guess.
Yeah. So you said Texas?
Yeah, in Houston.
Oh, wow. How did that happen?
That happened. Oh man, where do I even start? This is kind of a continuity. How about this? I'll continue the young Hurf story until we get to the point.
And then you'll get there. Okay, yeah.
So let's make it a little quicker. After the C64, I eventually got an NES from my parents for Christmas 1 year. It came with Ice Climbers. I think it only came with Ice Climbers. And then, you know, I eventually got Mario and Excite Bike. And then I got the golden cartridge version of Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. And then I got Mega Man 2, so that started my love for Nintendo games, and especially Zelda games.
Yeah.
So I got the NES somewhere in the 80s, like... So I'm an old man. I'm 41 this year, or I turned 41 this year. So I was born early 80s, and I think in 89, maybe a little earlier than that, I got the NES for Christmas with Ice Climbers, and then, you know, all the other games came eventually.
Yeah.
And then from then on out, it kind of started where I didn't really get the consoles as a gift anymore. It kind of had to be where I sold my old console and the whole gaming collection I had for it to afford the new console and like a game or two.
So sad. Yeah. I'm right there with you, man. It's sad. It's the sad truth.
That's how all my old games, you know, went away. It went from NES to like from NES to SNES. And then I had to sell the SNES and all the crap for my first PSX. And I got an N64, which I couldn't wait to get. So I bought the import US version, which was like twice as expensive. And I had to buy every game imported, which was also twice as expensive. So that was kind of a bad business decision in hindsight. But I got to play it like I don't know, 9 months earlier than everyone else.
You were the kid that's like, oh, I've got Mario 64 before everyone else, so everyone's coming over to Hurf's house to play.
Yeah, pretty much. That was me. We had like immediately on the day where I bought it for myself as a Christmas present from my parent, I think.
Okay.
And they were like, well, you can't have it till Christmas. And I was like, oh, come on. And then my friend was like, yeah, I'm coming over to have a sleepover. And they were like, all right, fine. You guys get to play. So we played Mario 64 all night.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And then after the N64, it just, it kept continuing. I kind of stuck with Nintendo for a long while. I still do. I still have a Switch. I've tried to get into their handhelds a lot, but I don't know. I don't move around enough and have enough opportunities to play a handheld,
Right. It's funny when they came out with the Switch, it's like, oh, you could take it anywhere. I'm like, I don't want to take it anywhere. I just want to sit on my couch.
I don't think I've taken my, I'm not sure if I should say this in public, but most my Switch comes out of its dock when I'm actually playing a game on it is when I have to go pee or poop. And I'm like, all right, I'm taking it with me. I don't want to pause the game, so I'm taking it with me for 10 minutes or whatever.
That's how they should have marketed it as like, hey, we're all going to be, we're a bunch of like 30-somethings on the top of the roof of New York City playing the Switch together. No, that's some bullshit. It's us on the can taking a shit as we got to continue and find that next quest or whatever in Breath of the Wild.
That's with hilarious. My non-existent wife yelling outside, when are you coming out there?
Yeah. Oh, it should zoom in from like the people on the roof having a good time, like into the window of the bathroom, and you see the guy playing the Switch. That's how it should have been marketed.
Just a sweaty 40-year-old, slightly overweight guy on the can playing his Switch.
Oh man.
Oh boy. Yeah. I would have been like, hell yeah, that's me. I mean, they got me.
Yep.
Anyway, to get back to the whole Texas thing, when I was about 18-ish, maybe a little earlier than that, the neighbor I was talking about earlier was still living next to me, and I was still living with my parents, and we were huge Elder Scrolls fans back then. We played Arena, the very first one. I don't know if anyone knows these old Elder Scrolls games, but I'm sure they're kind of known at least. We played Arena a lot, and then we started playing Daggerfall. And Daggerfall was a notoriously buggy game. And they released a couple of patches for it. And back in those days, we didn't have home internet. Me and that neighbor who had a car, you get a car here when you're 18, we drove to the internet cafe to download the newest Daggerfall patches to a floppy disk to take home so we'd be able to play the game and not fall through like a dungeon floor or something weird. And it just turned out that the last Daggerfall patch they ever released was slightly too big to fit on one floppy disk, and we had no idea what to do about it. So my solution was to wish for a home internet connection for my birthday from my parents. So I could just download it at home. So I did that, downloaded the patch, and that led me to the big old world of the internet chat rooms and forums, where I eventually met a family from Houston, Texas, who told me that I could come visit them if I was interested in seeing the U.S. And, this was way before 9/11, and way before anyone was like super mistrusting of everything that's happening on the internet. So, despite me barely being 18 and my parents being like, yeah, sure, I guess. I figured, yeah, sure, why not take them up on it? I was jobless at the time, unfortunately, still living with my parents, as I was saying. And I figured, why not, take the opportunity to visit America for 3 weeks and see it for the first time in my life ever. So I went over there, visited the family. The dad was like a pretty, big doctor in the Houston area in a hospital. He was like a chirurgeon. How do you pronounce that word?
Surgeon?
I guess a surgeon, yeah. It ended up that after the 3 weeks were almost over, he said, well, you've been a pretty awesome guy to have here. My son and my daughter really like you. You can pretty much stay with us as long as you want to, if you want to. And I figured, hey, why not? Why not stay here? So I ended up staying 3 years instead of 3 weeks, which also then resulted into me massively overstaying my visitor's visa and almost being thrown in jail when I tried to leave, but instead being banned for 5 years from traveling to the US.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So on a visitor's visa, you're allowed to stay 90 days.
Uh-huh.
And, 3 years is a little more than 90 days.
Just a little bit, yeah.
So when I eventually went back to the airport, I mean, there was, the in-between times was a whole thing with calling my parents and telling them that I'm not coming home and it being a whole drama thing. And, that was the whole thing. But when I finally went back home... Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I can't imagine that call because it's like, oh, our son just went to the United States in Texas through the internet for 3 weeks, and now he's calling to tell us that he's staying. I'd be like, is this like blink or like tap the phone twice or something if you're actually okay?
It was very strange, but I convinced them, and they talked to the dad there, and they talked, and thankfully my parents know at least a little bit of English, so they didn't have a massive communication barrier. So it all kind of worked itself out. And I eventually also, I think I might have told this somewhere before, but I eventually also felt really bad just, living there on unlimited, endless vacation time, basically. I wasn't paying any rent. I wasn't paying for any utilities or food or drink or anything. So I was like, hey, listen, we obviously both know I can't, go out and look for a job. I'm not here exactly legally, but I can try to do something to help support. So I started, taking like jobs that you could easily get. I worked at a gas station for a while, night shifts. I worked in a Target at a 24-hour photo development booth when they still had those.
Yeah, right.
And, stuff like that to help pay the rent and, do my part at least a little bit. So that's all kind of stuff that happened there. But as I said, the most eventful thing was when I tried to leave. And they looked into my passport as they do when you leave the country. And they're like, why does this stamp say you came here 3 years ago? And I was like, well, because I did. So, the two friendly big gentlemen with big guns and big handcuffs asked me to take a seat over there and wait a little while.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was a whole thing. And they told me I'd go to jail for overstaying my visa and not contacting them. And then they asked who I was with. And he had to come in to the airport like the dad of the family. And thankfully, because I don't know what he did, if he bribed them or just because he was kind of an influential doctor in the area or whatever, he talked them down or made it so that I didn't have to go to jail or pay any fines or get into any legal trouble. But they were very insistent on putting a very big stamp in my passport that said banned from entering the United States of America until, and then that date plus 5 years.
Wow. So did you enjoy your time here in the States? Like that's 3 years is a long time to be away, especially when you're that age. Those are like, that's just finishing up, just turning into an adult, right? Like, yeah,
pretty much. And it was weird because I was used to being able to drink from home and I couldn't drink the whole time I was in the US, which it wasn't a huge deal for me because I'm not a huge alcohol drinker in the first place, but it was a noticeable change where, in Germany, you can walk into a gas station and buy a 6-pack of beer when you're 16. Nobody's going to bat an eyelash. And, you don't get anything in America until you're 21 in most states, at least, I think, right?
Yeah, 21, yeah.
So that was a little weird, but other than that, I really enjoyed my time. And I feel like I had an unfortunate, well, not for me unfortunate, but for a realistic view unfortunate. I had a very skewed view on how America is because I didn't have to really, take care of myself. And I also lived in a very privileged and rich household with a massive house, a big pool, a whole family that was taken care of and that had, no school debt or anything like that. They were very, very privileged. So it was very enjoyable, but probably mostly because I could pretty much do what I want at any time, at all times. It was kind of, as I said earlier, it was kind of like an endless vacation away from my parents where nobody had any oversight over me or really cared. Obviously they took care of me, but
Sure.
They let me be my own person. And if I stayed up till 5 a.m. chatting on some internet, web chat program or whatever, they didn't care.
Yeah. That's cool though. That's a cool experience, I guess, right? Like, I mean, there's obviously like pros and cons to it all for sure. But what made you finally go back?
It just wasn't feasible anymore. Like the kids started going off to college, so I was like the kid that stayed at home. That wasn't actually the kid in the household. And we all knew that I was there illegally, and that the longer I stayed, the worse it get. And eventually I'd just be locked up forever and, never get anywhere anymore. And then, I also kind of started missing my family and decided it was kind of, unceremonious and weird the way I left. So at least, if I do decide ever to really move over to the United States or something, then I can at least do it in the real way, or in, an ordinary fashion, and say my goodbyes and everything, and not just be like, hey, this 3-week vacation has turned into 3 years. Bye.
3 years. Yeah. Was there thought about trying to extend your VC, or just kind of like, maybe someday I'll do that?
Well, not immediately. I did try for a couple of years after to, either find a job where I would maybe get sponsored for a visa, or, I also tried my luck 1 or 2 years in the green card lottery that happens every year. But that's such a fool's errand. That's just, it's such a waste of time. There's no way I would ever win. And even if I did win, you need to present like a specific amount of money that you have saved up and stuff like that there's no way I would ever get a green card. So I gave up on that pipe dream pretty quickly.
What kind of gaming were you doing when you were in the States?
Lots of N64.
Okay.
I remember...
Yeah, that's the height of it, yeah.
An interesting little factoid that I remember when I think back to that trip is that I have had at that time this, little game store here, like privately run game store where I knew the owners and stuff. They also sold me the American N64 that I had and stuff like that. And I remember talking to them before I went to America, and the Mission Impossible game for N64 was coming out. And they were like, yeah, if you can bring us back some copies, we'll pay you handsomely for it. Importing that shit is really expensive. I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll see what I can do. I remember buying a copy for myself and playing it, but I don't think I brought them any copies because, by the time I came back, it would have been pretty worthless, I assume.
Yeah. Oh, man, that was not a good game, by the way.
No, it was not. I really expected more of that, but boy, howdy.
Especially coming off of GoldenEye, right? GoldenEye was the big one. And so you think maybe another like spy sort of game would be good, but it was just not a great game.
I kind of like the whole mask mechanic that they had going, but it just didn't translate too well. It was so clunky. Yeah, not a great game.
So you go back home, and gosh, at this point, where we're starting to get into like the Wii and the PlayStation like 3 stuff. Where are you going as far as gaming goes?
So Hurf eventually turns into pretty much an almost exclusive PC gamer. Okay. I started earlier, let's say that. While I got my NES back in the day, the friend who originally had a C64 started going into the PC realm with 386s and playing Wolfenstein 3D and stuff like that. And I was like, ooh, I like my NES, but I really like this stuff too. So my parents eventually got us a PC, and I kind of always had a PC focus, especially ever since I got the internet and stuff like that. But I always had a console on the side because my consoles are mostly exclusive machines. That's what I like to call them, because that's really what they are.
Right.
Nowadays it's a little different, but that's kind of where that happened. And, I had my N64 or my PlayStation 1 or something like that, but I never owned a PlayStation 2 or 3. That was totally PC times.
Right.
I think I went from PlayStation 1 to like a Wii, and then eventually I got like a PS4, but I played a lot of PC games. That's really, I think, especially in those 20 to 30-year-old years, I suppose, was mainly PC gaming.
Was there a specific game that you were gravitated towards, or was it just playing as much as you can? Because there was a lot of different stuff coming out then.
Yeah, there was a lot of different stuff. I mean, I always kind of gravitated towards first-person shooters back then, and I still kind of do. Like, you know, I saw Wolfenstein 3D at my neighbor's place, as I said, and then came Doom and Doom 2, and then Duke Nukem 3D, all that stuff. I played some Commander Keen stuff, and Dune 2 is kind of a first RTS sort of game, and then the first Warcraft game and stuff like that. But I think the first game that really, like, made my parents go, hey, you need to get off that box, was probably Quake. And with the internet connection that I had, Quake World, like the multiplayer version of it, that's really where I got my multiplayer start, I'd say, other than, you know, couch co-op or whatever.
Sure. So how deep did you get into it?
Pretty deep, I'd say. Like, I wasn't, you know, I don't really have any accolades to show, so to speak, but I played a ton of Quake World. I played a lot. Like, you know, I unfortunately, there wasn't any kind of Steam thing that counted your hours or whatever, but it must have been thousands, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I played a ton of Quake World, and I played even more Quake 2. And I do have a little bit of accolades to show. Well, not really to show, unfortunately, but I was at one point the second best German Quake 2 player. So,
oh wow,
you know, that means something to me, at least.
I mean, that's the most important thing, is if it means something to you. So that's, I mean, you're logging a ton of hours then if you're that good. Yeah.
I'm playing like basically all the time. I'm unfortunately, you know, my how do I put this? My ability to hold a job was not very good at that time. And my parents' ability to overlook my shortcomings was, you know, I guess much bigger than my ability to hold a job. So I got to live at home for, you know, a long time for basically free. And just play games and do whatever I want. And I did that for a long time, especially with stuff like that, where I really got into it. And there was like no esports scene or anything like that. You know, that there were a couple of sponsored teams, but that was really out there. And sponsored meant you got like maybe $100 a month and maybe a keyboard or something like that. So nothing to live with, really. But yeah, I really enjoy Quake and Quake 2 and multiplayer. And then, of course, which should come to as no surprise, Brood War, so StarCraft, and then eventually Brood War as far as RTS games goes. And then, of course, StarCraft 2. Those were the other big ones.
Was it StarCraft 2 that kind of got you hooked again into something where you're spending like a major amount of time in it?
No, not really, funnily enough. So after Quake and Quake World, it's I'm kind of messing up my release dates here, so I can't really tell you which game came after which right now. But I played a ton of Brood War. I played a ton of Quake and Quake 2. Quake 2 is when stuff got kind of serious for a while, where, you know, that was really the first time where I realized, all right, so these guys putting like little clan tags in front of their names. Some of them, they're not just doing it for funsies and, you know, because it's a good name. Like my first Quake clan was called Sandwich Ladies, and I just thought that was a great name, so I wanted to join. I had no idea what a clan even was. So, you know, I was part of the Sandwich Ladies for some reason, and I thought that was funny. Nice. But then, you know, with Quake 2, I started to figure out, no, wait a minute. These guys are, you know, some of them, they have like weekly trainings together, and they don't play, you know, necessarily one-on-one dual style stuff. They play like, we used to play a lot of Battlegrounds, which was basically a 5-on-5 map control kind of thing, where you try to lock off the map from the others. And it was sort of like a team deathmatch with some added rules, I suppose. And I really enjoyed that a lot. And that got really serious. And then Brood War, I just started getting kind of... I've never really gotten anywhere in Brood War or StarCraft 2, other than, you know, getting a good promotion into a good league at some point. But I've always been fascinated by watching the Korean pros for those games. Because... especially back then, it was kind of hard to watch Korean Brood War matches. I watched them like on GOM TV in some tiny little player that you had to download specifically and make an account for it, and it was like the worst quality ever. I didn't understand a word they were saying, but seeing these guys fly over their keyboards and controlling all these units was insane to me. But to name a game that really got me to spend another insane amount of time again on it was Team Fortress 2.
Oh, okay.
I've kind of rekindled my love with it recently, which is why it's kind of fresh on my mind. I stopped playing when I had 2001 hours on Steam, and I started playing again 2 weeks ago, and I'm now at 2047 hours. So
okay.
We're back in the game, I guess. But that's not competitive, at least not for me.
Sure, that's more just something that you just really enjoy. When you're doing Quake, when you're playing Quake, and eventually gets into like StarCraft stuff, there is no Twitch. There's YouTube. I don't even know if YouTube is there yet or if it's in its infancy. But you mentioned that you started getting into like broadcasting. How did that happen, and where was that? So that really started happening with like StarCraft 2, which was much later, obviously. And, we had Twitch at that point. And I don't know how much you followed StarCraft 2 when it came out, but I know nothing about StarCraft.
Okay.
So,
no problem. But for a while when it came out and a couple of years after it was absolutely massive. There was almost no weekend where there wasn't like a tournament going on somewhere in Denmark or whatever.
Right. I knew it was big, but I'd never played the game. And it was definitely everywhere for sure.
So that's when I kind of really fell in love with it. I mean, I knew I would like it from playing Brood War and watching Brood War so much. But I was really hoping I'd get into StarCraft 2 as well, and I definitely did. And I really, it really got to me, or it really spoke to me when I saw these guys now in English, commentating all these tournaments that were going on every weekend. There were like, I don't know, a group of maybe 10 guys that would commentate everything in StarCraft 2. Most of all, of course, Artosis and Tasteless, which I'm sure most people who have any interest in StarCraft know about. And I thought, I would really like to do that too. But what do I have to show for it? How do you even get into something like this? So I just kind of started looking around what was happening, tried to sign up for some community-run things that didn't really go anywhere. And eventually I found a group of people on the Something Awful forums, out of all things, who were also really into StarCraft 2 and playing it. And they formed a clan called Z's, Z-E-E-Z. I forgot what it stands for, to be honest. I'm sure it has some meaning. The clan symbol was a dik-dik, those little tiny, I don't know, fawn, little looking things. Yeah, they played and talked about StarCraft in I think it was like a Skype group chat or something old-fashioned like that. And they held their own little tournaments, and they wanted to, broadcast the matches for the other guys to watch it and see what's happening. And they asked for casters. So that's kind of how I got into it, I suppose. I offered to cast, and they were like, yeah, sure, why not? Give it a try. They liked what I did and what I said. I offered to broadcast some matches on my stream as well. So I got some restream experience, which back then didn't really work out super well because, remember the terrible internet. So that definitely didn't help too much for the restream.
Sure.
But that kind of got me the itch for it. And then eventually I just started downloading replays from games that interested me. And I kind of started casting them it wasn't really on Twitch. I did have a couple of them on Twitch. That's why my Hurfy Durfy Twitch account is so many moons old. But most of the stuff happened in that Skype group call, where the community was just like, hey, we like listening to your voice. You say funny stuff. You know stuff about the game. Yeah, sure, why not? It was I could have maybe made a YouTube channel out of it or something. But there were so many better people than me doing it at that time. I felt like that I never really had the drive to do it. It was kind of just a hobby thing. But that's really what got me into commentating. And that's also kind of what had me interested in commentating Rando immediately, basically.
Yeah. All right. So we kind of circled back to Rando then. You are doing commentary for the entrance tournament, even though you just started racing, recently, or just started playing the game recently. Where do you go from there? Who do you meet? Who are you hanging out with? What kind of are you part of the community? I know you eventually became an admin too, right? In some areas. How did all that stuff kind of happen?
Okay, so, oh man, do I remember all the details? I can't promise I'll remember everything super correctly, but I'll try my best.
Well, it is on the record, so if you don't tell the truth, I'm just kidding. Just what you remember.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to correct me, anyone who's listening or who remembers better than I do. I don't mind, but I'll try my best. So we've had the entrance tournament. I've made a couple of friends. Most of the players there, some of them who aren't even really around anymore, I think. The names, man, I'm terrible with names, which is probably the biggest apology out of all of them, that I need to make that I never remember any names. But I've met a couple of people that I still hang out with. I think Solsky was part of it. Ak was in it, I believe. Korek. Who else? I think maybe Jem even. Just a couple of the old people who really enjoyed playing entrance back then. And I think back then it was obviously more of a niche thing, and it had like its own little group of people. They were kind of, the entrance kids, and then you had the normal Rando kids who played their stuff. Back then, entrance was also maintained by AA still, I believe, and had like its own standalone executable where you had to run the ROM through and stuff like that. So it wasn't even officially generated on the webpage. And that's why it kind of had like its own little niche sub-community. And after that, I tried again to get involved in the main tournament. And since I had some prior experience now, and it all kind of started, that was the time when it really started blowing up. And they had much more players, much more matches, much more tournament organization. It wasn't just a kind of little thing for the people, from the players to the players kind of thing anymore. Right. It was like much more of a, people are actually interested in that. We're getting more and more players and stuff. So they also needed more people, and I started commentating. And again, being able to sort of exploit my parents' friendliness towards me and not having a job, I basically just calmed everything that I could. I'd commentate matches at 4 a.m. or something, my time, no problem. And that really got me known kind of out there. I wasn't known as a player, but I was known as a commentator in a way where people were like, hey, it's Hurf commentary, yay. And then people were excited to hear me. So that was an exciting time for me. I really enjoyed that. And I still would much rather commentate than play.
Sure. So the 512 tournament, did you do a lot of commentary for that?
Yeah. And I think that was also one of the first tournaments that I was involved with on the more administrative side of things. I'm going to pull this up right now, but I pulled this up a while ago for SGL that's coming up. I looked at my challenge history a while ago, and I saw that the first tournament that I have some sort of admin power over is the 2017 secondary tournament. But I think that's the tournament that I played in. That's the one where I played against Vitorb. And then the spring 2018 tournament, that's where I think they promoted me to a comm mod. I think that was the role that I had in there. So I was a commentary moderator. That was also the time when the whole commentary quiz stuff started coming up, and where they started, trying to weed out bad commentary, so to speak, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the career of Hurf goes, I suppose. They took me on as a commentary mod because I put in so much work as a commentator. And from that, I eventually somehow weaseled my way into an admin position for the main tournament. For the fall tournament of 2018. That's kind of when it started.
So what did you see as your role as the admin? Did you enjoy kind of that aspect? Because commentary is one thing, but admin, you start doing, you start being a part of the decision-making process and kind of guiding where the tournament goes. Did you enjoy that kind of role? Is that something that you were looking to do as you kind of evolved in the community?
Originally, I did, yeah. I thought it was an interesting job because Rando, like it still does, kept getting bigger and bigger and developing more possibilities for what you could do with it. And I think it was an interesting part of the admin job to sort of figure out how can we make it so people are enjoying it, but we're also sort of highlighting the new things in the randomizer. Because especially for those early tournaments, it often was sort of a hand-in-hand thing with the development team for a couple of years where it was like, all right, we're releasing a new version, and now we're doing a tournament with that new version to kind of showcase these new possibilities that the Rando has now. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was an interesting process, but eventually it just got so big.
Right.
That's the thing. It's it's the tournament itself is so big, the administrative team is so big, like the whole there's such a bureaucracy almost around the whole thing that it just got kind of, it got a bit too much for me personally.
Right. It becomes work then, right? Like it feels like you're doing a job as opposed to having a good time, hanging with the buds.
I also, while I appreciate that, I don't really know how to put this in a good way, but I appreciate all the different viewpoints that we had as an admin team and stuff, with all the...
Tell the truth, Hurf.
No. The truth is, I think it was extremely tiring to have to discuss everything ad nauseum almost, It wasn't the fault of anyone, and I think it was good that we discussed everything that we had to discuss because, sometimes you just don't think of a thing that really turns out terribly afterwards. Yeah. Like that one tournament where we wanted to make it like... I forgot, like 5 crystals, something people, the one where people started revolting.
Yeah, 4-6 Ganon, I think is what the joke.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, we were like, okay, well, maybe, that could have used some more time in the cooker. But at the same time, it was just so endless. And it just got, as you said, it felt too much like a work meeting at some point.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Though you still are an admin for the ladder, how did that kind of come about, and how has that been different?
Well, okay. It came about in that I joined the ladder after Duncan made it and saw that in season 0 that people were interested and it was kind of working out, but he had nobody other than him. And I wasn't interested in playing, of course, because I haven't played in friggin' ages. So I had a normal, boring white name on that Discord, and I don't like that. So I said, hey, Duncan, can I be an admin so I have a different color name? And he said, yeah, sure. And that's how it worked. No, realistically, he said, well, you know what? I know it was mainly a joke, but actually, I think it'd be a cool thing if I had someone that was in a different time zone than me that could kind of cover the hours where I'm asleep and not around to, look at things or at least say something to people that have a problem. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I mean, I'm down. Definitely. I'll help out. And it's been better in that it's really just Duncan and I making the decisions. And it's realistically, it's really only Duncan because, it's his child and it's his thing. And he likes bouncing ideas off of me. But everything I say, I end with, ultimately, it's your decision. You're the boss. I really do feel like he's my boss.
Not a bad boss to have, though, right? Like Duncan's
totally
super chill guy. So are you helping as far as writing code or doing anything on the back end of the ladder? Or are you just kind of there as like his support?
Well, I have offered to help on the back end, but I'm not sure if I actually could. And he would have to give me access to all like his private computers and stuff like that. And so he takes complete care of the back end. I know a little bit of the magic, but even I don't know the whole thing, and I don't want to know. So, in case I ever get taken hostage or something, nobody can squeeze the ladder magic out of me. Nobody's getting that secret out of me. And so as far as actually helping, I'm mainly there to cover the times when races are happening when he's asleep in case something weird happens with the bot. I can't really do anything about it because I don't have a lot of access to the bot.
Right.
But I can at least, fix the roles that the bot's had before he crashed, or reset the race in case it didn't start right or something like that. I have a couple of things that I can do. And I can tell people, hey, listen, I noticed this. I saw it. I'll pass it on to Duncan once he's awake, and he'll take care and fix everything. So people are calmed down and don't, have to sit there for 4 or 6 hours and not know what the heck's going on.
Right.
Other than that, it's mainly, bouncing ideas around. We're talking about new modes for the next season, or, hey, how about we remove this one and bring this one back? Do you think this will work out? Do you think we could do this? And, I think we work pretty well together as a team. I really think it works out.
Yeah, the ladder's not the place to be, honestly. It's the best way to race the game, in my opinion. So as your role sort of has changed throughout the years, in the last 5 years of you when you first discovered the game, you were doing a lot of commentary, and then you get some admin stuff. Now you'll do a commentary occasionally here or there, and you're the admin of the ladder, which is its own kind of thing. Where has you seen your role in the community gone, and where do you see it going in the future? Like, what keeps you around? Because you're not playing the game, and you're not calming as much, and you're not an admin of the main tournament. You know what I mean? Like, you do have the Go Mode podcast, which we're not going to really talk too much about Go Mode because you get to talk about Go Mode every episode. So everyone knows that you're on the Go Mode podcast, and we can hear the history of that and stuff on that show. But how do you see your role going in the future, and kind of as it's progressed? Is there a point where Hurf leaves the community for good?
Maybe. I can't really say one way or another, to be honest. I think currently I've said this before. I'm here still for the people and less for the game itself. I think I've made some really great friends here in the community, and some, at least some good acquaintances that I'm very happy to know as well. So I feel like it's a good community to hang out in. There's black sheep or whatever you want to call them in every community, and you can't join a community and like everyone. That's not possible. There will always be some sort of friction somewhere. So, I think it's a little unfortunate. I'd rather everyone get along, but I think that's just a pipe dream and impossible. But other than that, I've made a lot of friends over the years here, and I'm still around mainly for them and less so for the game itself. Right. And I think that's also kind of where it'll probably be in the future. Every now and again, I get, a little bit of an itch where I'm like, maybe I'll play another seed. But I don't think there'll ever be some sort of Hurf comeback to the racing scene or something like that.
Right.
I mean, probably because there's, can you really have a comeback if you've never had any success to begin with?
So it's the start of Hurf's ascent.
Yeah, right. So it's like the start of Hurf's career 5 years after he joined the community. He's finally decided to do something. So, I don't think that's happening, but I'll probably stick around for the people. But I will admit it's, I don't know. I don't want to say it's getting harder and harder because that's not true, but I feel like I see more and more of my friends kind of moving on in a way, and more new people coming in, which is a great thing, but I don't really know many of them, and they're not really part of my friend group. So it feels like it's kind of thinning itself out. So yeah, maybe if eventually there's only 1 or 2 people left or something, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever, I guess, that's it for Rando. I don't think I'll ever completely lose interest in Rando, but I can't say that I'll be around forever. It'll really depend on who else is around, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what the cool thing is. You don't play the game, and yet you're still a huge part of the community. People know who Hurfy Durfy is. Like I said, you don't do even a lot of commentary. Do you see yourself going back and doing some comms a little bit more, or do you feel like even that has sort of been
No, I think I want to. I've wanted to for quite some time now, to be honest, but I haven't really found the time. I'm now actually not a complete, utter failure anymore in life, and I've had, unfortunately, kind of, shortly after my commentary career, if you want to call it that, in Rando took off, I found a job that I've really enjoyed and done since as a programmer. And so I've had a full-time job, and you know yourself, real life just keeps getting busier the older you get. So I find it harder and harder to actually comp for anything, especially because I feel like I don't really have a lot of ties to the German community personally, because I didn't start out in the German community. I didn't find this game through the German community. I found this game, and then eventually a German community developed for it. So I don't really hang out with the German community a lot, and I don't think, other than the usual suspects like Schalzer and Jem and Delay and the people that hang around a lot, I don't think a lot of people in the German community would even know who I am. But it's hard for me to find the time to commentate where it's not like, all right, this match that I'm interested in, or that has a friend of me playing in it, or that has someone else that I want to calm the match also starts at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. And I'm like, well, right, I would love to commentate that, but I guess it's not happening. So that's really the main problem, where I'm like, all right, unless it's somehow a super EU-friendly time or on the weekends, I just don't really get the opportunity. And then I often kind of forget about it before it really happens,
Sure. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. You finally grew up.
I'd love to come more.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He finally grew up. I don't know if I, put my signature under that, but at least, he finally held a job for longer than 2 years.
All right, so I'm going to ask you the question I ask everyone, and that's about Tilt, which it's going to be a little bit different for you since you don't play the game. And I don't know if you experienced Tilt while you played Rando in the short time that you did, but you obviously are a gamer and have experienced saltiness and tilt when you're playing these games. So how do you handle it, and what would be your advice for handling tilt?
Well, so I think that's I'm gonna have to think about that for a little bit, and I'll try to buy me some time by talking about this first. I think for me, I've also experienced tilt, not specifically in Rando, I guess, because as you said, my career was extremely short, and a couple of races I did, like if you look at my SRL profile, it's kind of embarrassing. I think there's over 50% forfeit rate and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I've definitely experienced tilt in Quake 2, playing on the ladder in StarCraft and StarCraft 2, where you start going on a losing streak suddenly, and you're like, oh my god, why am I even playing this game?
Right.
And it's rough, really. How do you deal with tilt? I've always had my issues with it, to be honest. I'm not sure I ever really found a recipe that helped me. How do I put this? Especially in the first-person games that I've played, in the shooter games, I've experienced sometimes kind of like a Zen thing, where I'm playing and I'm not doing very well. I'm getting shot up a lot. I'm making stupid mistakes, and I would normally get tilted, but it just kind of, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Next time I'll play, or in half an hour or something, it'll be over. I'll play fine again. And it just kind of doesn't faze me. But sometimes, I'm like, I really have to hold myself back from not destroying some peripheral of my PC that I'm currently using. Right. So it's really rough for me to answer. And I don't think I've ever, hard to say, but maybe I'm sorry to answer this with a question to you, but have you experienced tilt in Rando in a way where you're like, I want to break my controller, I'm like super raged out about this? Is that something that happens in Rando?
Oh yeah. Usually, well, for me, it's not usually during the game. Maybe if it's like a very last location, I get pretty tilted. But it's usually, honestly, I experience more tilt when I play well and then lose. I think that's where my tilt kind of comes from. It's where it's like, oh man, I've done everything right. I've played really well, and I just lost. And I'm like, fuck you, game.
Right.
And,
see, that's kind of the thing where I think the tilt is very specific with Rando, because in all the games that I've played that have been competitive, you're always very acutely aware of where you're standing as far as, you know, am I winning or am I losing? Mm-hmm. I think it's maybe kind of comparable to what I experienced in StarCraft 2 a lot, where you really tried your heart out for like 20 minutes. You macroed your best, you microed your best, you built super great defenses, you got your build order down perfectly. And then after 20 minutes of, you know, working your ass off, some random ass attack just comes in and destroys everything, and you lost the game in like 15 seconds. And you're like, oh my God, what just happened?
Yep.
And that's, you know, that's kind of comparable, I suppose. And that is something that has tilted me like off the planet in the past, because what do you even do about that? Mm-hmm. I think despite how rough it is, and it took me a very long time to really like get over the hump, I think the best thing you can do is give yourself like 5 to 10 minutes to cool off, like walk away from your computer. I don't know, take a dump, take your Switch to the toilet, and remember the great commercial that they showed earlier about the 40-year-old sweaty, you know, overweight guy. And then once you've cooled off a little bit, rewatch the match and really try to analyze what's happening and why it happened. And if it's, especially with Rando, first try to analyze if it was really something that was in your control, or if it was something that, you know, Rando was just randoing. You know, that guy, I don't know, just magically went to the right chest or skipped the right locations or didn't skip the right locations, or you know, whatever. Something that's out of your jurisdiction, so to speak, where it definitely clearly wasn't your fault. And if it's not your fault, that should hopefully at least be a little bit of consolation.
Yeah.
And if it was your fault, then it's going to suck and it's going to feel really crappy. But if you manage to, you know, calm yourself down, give yourself more time if you need to. But if you manage to kind of objectively look at what happened and why it happened, then you can easily probably correct that for next time or for the next 100 times and never make that mistake again. And you've, you know, provided something that will better yourself for all your future seats probably. So I think, you know, if you manage to approach it like that, I know it sounds very easy on paper, but if you manage to approach it like that, I think that can be very healthy.
I think that's great advice. And I think something that I can, and hopefully others that are listening can, take that to heart. And, you know, honestly, try to prep yourself for it, right? Like be prepared to lose. Not saying you're going to lose, but you know, it's going to happen. Even the best lose in this game.
Right.
Jem and Blaine aren't in the Kaz Boots finals. You know, like those are two of the best Kaz Boots players, and then neither one of them are in the finals. Everyone loses in this game. So, you know, kind of have that sort of mentality, not like I'm going to lose, but be prepared for it so that when it happens, you know, you get pissed off, you figure it out, and then you analyze and see how you can get better. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
And I think the biggest mistake you can probably do is beat yourself up over a mistake that you found.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, everyone loses. I'm always reminded, and not to throw the guy under the bus, but, you know, SGL 2019, Jem had it in the bag, then he fell to Ganon, which, you know, for someone of the caliber of Jem normally doesn't happen, but everyone makes mistakes, especially in a setting like that. Yep. And bam, you lost the game. And, you know, he took it really well. And I thought that was extremely commendable. And you're not going to learn anything if you start going, oh, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that? Yada, yada, yada. Just, you know, take it for what it is. Sometimes the universe doesn't agree with you.
Yeah, man. Well, I agree with you. And I'm super happy to have you on the show. Finally able to sit down and have a really great conversation, man. I can't thank you enough for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And as I said, I'm really glad that we finally managed to get this going. I don't know how I managed to always be absent when you were on our podcast. But it really somehow it worked out like that. It was I can definitely promise you again. I think I've said this to you before, but it was no you know, it wasn't malicious intent. I didn't do it on purpose. Yeah. I'm not trying to run away from you.
Again, big shout outs to her for coming on the show. Big fan of Hurfy Durfy. I really enjoy listening to him on his podcast, the Go Mode podcast, and just a great dude. Just someone that I can relate to on a lot of levels, and just a huge pleasure to have him on the show. We'll be back next week with Sinak. That's going to be a good one. Really excited to talk with Sinak. A lot of the reason why Link to the Past has been able to grow is because of Sinak. A lot of the league's success, especially early on, was because of Sinak. I'm really excited just to hear his story and hear how he got involved. And yeah, just come back next Monday for that. Very excited to talk with Sinak. 216 Weekly again this Saturday, noon Eastern. We're going to be doing the True Pot Hunt. Those take around 2 hours from what I'm told, a little over 2 hours, kind of like an entrance seed. So everyone is welcome to join that. Again, it will be restreamed on my channel, twitch.tv/VRHN_. The league starts next week, so look out for speed gaming channels and league Twitch stream channels for all of the restreams, because they're going to be a lot. There's a lot of league action happening starting Monday. 216pod.com has the link to the Discord, as well as all the information about the show. Use that to subscribe. If you could subscribe wherever you get your podcast, that would be great. If you could share the show, that would also be great. Excited about the end of the season. Excited about what season 3 could look like. Excited to have you as a listener. All right, next Monday, Sinak. See you next week.